presents Coffee Fueled Stories. Hello. It's me, Michelle, your host and pocket DJ of Coffee Fueled Stories, a show where storytelling and coffee hang out. This month's special guest is none other than the CEO and founder of Crystal Lake, Mr. Joe Mynhardt. Hello, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's definitely an honor to be here.
This is awesome. So thank you for taking the time. I know it's very late there. So, and we were just discussing your new office, which looks awesome. So congratulations on that.
Oh yeah, this is my first office ever. I started out just, like in the corner of the living room type thing. And so I've saved a lot of photos over the years of what I want my office to be. So give me a few more months and I'll give everyone a tour.
Sounds good. Well, let's get started. So there's a lot to talk about, and we'll try to get it all in before bedtime for you. So right now the big buzz has been with Bob Dylan. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about your writing workshops and your humble beginnings. So how cool is that? Like you were just saying, you started, very small, and now here you are. And I wanted to ask you about South Africa. And then, of course, I was wondering if you would share a few Afrikaans swear words. Could you do that?
Okay,
Okay.
that's fun.
Okay. So let's start with the big buzz, which is Bob Dylan and his tweet. So would you please let the listeners know, give us some background in regard to what that is all about and how freaking awesome that is?
Yeah, that was quite weird. Basically, I got up, turned on the computer, and I'm still like half asleep, waiting for the first coffee to cool down. And I see a message from one of the staff members. You might want to look at this. And I'm like, okay, it's another author who shared the tweet. And I said, but it says Bob Dylan, Chris Lake Publishing. And I immediately woke up and just read it. So Bob Dylan tweeted that he was at the Frankfurt Book Festival. There were a bunch of parties going on because there's publishers everywhere. And he was looking for Chris Lake Publishing because we published The Great God Pan, which is, of course, a public domain book, but we have 4 of those that it's just like awesome old stories that we want new readers to experience. We are continuing that line. It's just a bit of a holdup. But somewhere he picked up one of them and he was looking for us there. Now, we did have representatives there, but we didn't have a table just with Chris Lake Publishing on it. So not sure where he picked up the book, but he was there looking for us. Unfortunately, I couldn't be there because I live in South Africa. But so he tweeted about it, tagged us. Well, the people tagged us, like all the comments. And we contacted his team. We even got hold of like his agents, his management team, his lawyer. But so far, we haven't heard anything back because he also said he might have some stories we might be interested in. So, I can just imagine what he would write.
How cool is that? That is so cool. Do you have a favorite Bob Dylan song, by the way?
I actually, the first song I learned playing on guitar was "The Times Are Changing" when I was like still like just learning. Well, I'm still a learner, a beginner, but that was one of the coolest things I could practice on. And his songs are quite easy to learn, all the old songs. And even as like a young 19, 20-year-old, I was watching the old Bob Dylan black and white shows where he's just like playing to a bunch of students in the park and stuff like that. So I've always been quite interested in his work. I mean, his songwriting is amazing. And then, of course, he has a lot of words from his favorite stories inside some of his songs, including The Great God Pan. So it's an interesting study to go and actually like deep dive into it, which I'll probably never have time for, but I'd love to do it.
Yeah, and what's really cool is they now have the movie that's coming out about
Yes.
his. So the timeliness of this is like so cool. Very
And
cool.
immediately, of course, we thought this can't be the real guy, but I quickly Googled it, and he took over his own Twitter account end of September. And since then, the media, like all the big magazines and journalists, were keeping a close eye because he only tweets like every 10 days, and it's always something worth investigating with like a backstory and some history and stuff like that. So immediately that same day, there were posts going up on Rolling Stone magazine and like a bunch of big ones. And we got an interview request from the Wall Street Journal and stuff like that. So that was the most press we've ever had.
That is so cool. Well, I'm hoping that that would be really cool. Like if Bob Dylan could like come and visit your office, that would be like a great way to christen your new office. So that would be. So we're gonna put that out there. We're gonna say, universe, that's gonna happen. Go see Joe. Go see Joe.
A nice Bob Dylan collection of short stories.
That
Just
that would
imagine.
that would be awesome. So, do you like, let's since we're on a music vein, I wanted to ask, do you listen to music when you write? Is that something that you listen to
Yes.
like before or okay, so what do you listen to when you're writing?
Well, I basically have Spotify on, and I've got about like 2,000 of my favorite songs listed there, and it's just on shuffle from morning till night. And whether I'm editing, writing, working, answering emails, and now in the new office, I've got people sitting on both sides of me, and hopefully they like what I like because it's quite a variety from like 50s, 60s music all the way to like today's stuff. But I have to say more 80s, 90s music. I am a bit of a metal fan, but I try and keep it down for them. But Iron Maiden is my favorite band, so that tells you a bit about me.
That's awesome. So, does Eddie ever appear in any of your stories?
I wish. I am gonna get myself an Eddie like figurine here somewhere in the office. I've already got an Iron Maiden flag on one of the desks just to cover up all the old, like it's old wood and stuff. So that's very cool. But yes,
That's
eventually there's going to be a lot of Eddie stuff in here as well. In the books, no, I don't want to get in trouble. But maybe one day we'll do something with Iron Maiden if we're lucky.
That would be really cool. So Bruce Dickinson, he became a
Yes.
pilot. He's like
Mm.
a commercial airline pilot. Like, can you imagine? You know, the pilots are standing there as you enter the plane, and all of a sudden you're like, um,
Yeah,
uh,
he even teaches the pilots these days. He's so good and so widely, like he can fly like 20 different airplanes that he now teaches young pilots, and he writes manuals on it, and he flies the helicopter with the band like to the show. So that's amazing.
that's so freaking cool. That's so cool. Yeah, I haven't finished his what does this button do? Or when you push this button, it's his memoir.
Yeah,
I haven't finished that. I started it, but I
there's
haven't
a
finished
lot
it.
of plane stuff in there, a lot.
Yes, yes,
More than the band stuff almost. So it just
totally.
shows you where his interests lie.
Totally. What does this button do? I think that's what does this button do? Yes. Do you like beer? Do you drink beer?
Yes, I actually like quite a few South African brands, and I was born in Namibia, which is like it used to be a German colony, and so there's lots of German beer and stuff there. So when we moved to South Africa, they started selling it over here as well. So I try and like not drink too much because I pick up weight quite easily because I sit the whole day. But yeah, it's summer now. It's hot. There's nothing like a nice cold beer, and then like hot coffee in the evening again.
For sure.
Can't
Have
go
you,
without.
Iron Maiden has a beer. That's where I was
Yes,
going. I don't. Have you tried it?
yes. They were here in South Africa a few years ago. I bought like a bunch of shirts, the flag, bandana, and a bunch of beers, and I kept the little lids of the beer can, well, the bottles. They're here in my office somewhere.
That's
But I don't see them in stores anymore, but I buy them immediately. So especially now that I have space to like put them.
That's awesome. So in regard to that, when I was reading your the book on page 80, writing, it was the book. I'm sorry, Shadows in Ink. I
Yes.
just finished Shadows in Ink, and in there on page 80, you say it's why fans want to buy them drinks, and you're talking about authors and why fans want to buy authors drinks. So on page 80, it's why fans want to buy them drinks. So what drink can I buy you?
I'm actually open to, well, I'm a whiskey guy mainly, but I I like to taste and taste different things, and there's so many. Like I don't think you'll ever taste everything. So it's like some people are foodies, and we do that as well. But I like to try a different thing every month until I find something I really like. But at the moment, it's Scottish or Irish whiskey that I enjoy most with ginger ale. So and
Nice.
ice.
That sounds delicious. Nice. It sounds refreshing as well.
Mm.
Like
Oh, definitely.
that's
Mm.
awesome. So in the book Shadows and Ink, Volume One, because specifically Volume One, I haven't read Volume Two, but in this volume, you start out where you talk about your introduction to literature and what got you into horror and the darker aspects of
Mm.
authors and writing. And you mentioned Dance of Death woodcuts, Dante's Inferno,
Mm.
and Beowulf.
Oh yes. Oh, that was amazing. I every now and then I remember things. I've got a horrible memory because I'm so focused on now and the future, and I hardly ever look back. But every time I try and think of like when I was young, old memories start popping up, and I can't always figure out exactly what came first. But I do know I was about, I think, 9 years old. Now remember, we were Afrikaans, so I picked up one of my sister's reading books. She's 2 years older than I am, and I just immediately started reading English. Probably because I watched so many movies, and so my parents were quite shocked. And I immediately then decided, well, what am I gonna read next? Now I'm a sucker for a good cover. So at the library, I went for the cool covers, and for me, cool was anything with monsters on it. And we didn't have as many comic book choices back then in Namibia. It was mainly DC and Archie comics. So Superman, Batman, Archie. That's basically all we had. And if you did find anything special like Silver Surfer, it was only one issue. You couldn't read like the whole storyline. And so I always had to jump around comic book issues, but I didn't care. And so books, Frankenstein, stories that I heard from an older guy told me about the Count of Monte Cristo once, but he made it sound way scarier than it was, or it's just like my imagination. And then, of course, I used to slip out at night and go and watch Freddy Krueger and all those movies while my parents thought I was asleep. I was caught a few times, but I just waited 20 minutes and went back again. So somewhere in there, either through comics, books, movies, like it was never a choice. It was just, this is what I love. Like horror, things that like stretch the imagination. Like there's no rules of like the laws of physics and all that stuff. Like anything can happen, and I mean that's what your imagination has to be. Anything is possible. Uh,
I love
mm,
that. Yeah, and you reference Frankenstein,
mm,
Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
yes.
And the way that you set up the book is just it's awesome. Shadows and Ink, Volume One. And one thing I thought that was awesome was you talk about how important it is to have an ergonomic setup
Mm,
and to make sure that you know make sure you give your eyes a rest, make sure that you get up and move, because it's a very sedentary writing can be a very sedentary and isolating endeavor. And so you actually address all of those like a couple times in the very beginning. I was like, oh, I wonder if he's going to address that. You know, you would drop a little like hint, and then at the end you have a whole section on it, and I was like, well, there
Yeah.
you go.
Yes, I used to struggle quite a lot 5 or 6 years ago. Back my arm, like wrists, and even just from sitting the whole day, like spasms and stuff in my legs, and I I couldn't even like sleep comfortably because everything was sore. And over like with some research and exercise and stuff, I realized that the best exercise for that kind of body ache is just walking. But especially like if I haven't done it for a few days, you can start feeling it building up. And anyway, so and you don't want to take medicine the whole time. So
No.
preventative is the best. So I got the right chair. Make sure my legs are like 90-degree angles with the knees. The screen when we started the meeting, you my screen was a bit higher than this because when I work, I want it to be eye level. So I just dropped the screen a bit now so that I could at least be in the middle of it. But all of these things, I make sure I sit properly and everything. So it's fun sometimes to like cross your legs and sit like this and everything. But I don't want to bend over because then, like, if you work 15 hours in a chair and you arch your back, your like over because you can't see on the screen, then you're going to feel it. And the moment you're not 100%, um, you can't produce 100% the next day. So it's easy to say, I'll push through today. Um, but if you're sore tomorrow, you work so much less that you could have just worked half one day and half the next day. It was, you wasted a whole day trying to push through, and now the next day you're unproductive. So balance is the key.
I was just about to say that you address balance. You say it's very important to have balance, and that's 100%. It's true, and I can relate to that because you know some days I feel like I just sit in this little space all day, and then you know you get up from your desk and you're like, oh wow, there's like a whole world out there. And I used to do the same thing, you know, studying for school. I would sit for 12
Oh,
hours reading and writing, and thank goodness I had a dog because the dog is what got me away from my desk to go take him out. And I would be like, okay, we're going to take a 20-minute walk now. I need it. So,
I recall when I was still studying, that's probably what got me into this habit. I used to study from 7 in the morning till 7 at night, like straight through. But I mean, you can do those things when you're young,
yeah,
like days on end. But these days, I mean, I'm 44 now, so I can still do like a 12 to 15 hour day, but then the next day I can only do about like 10 to 12. So I'm trying to keep it a bit more balanced. You still get a lot of work done. What I always say is we overestimate what we can do in a day, but we underestimate how much you can get done in a week or a month or a year. So I've always got the bigger picture in mind. Even if I just move forward a little bit on every project, it's still moving forward. And then some Saturday I'll think, let's finish this thing today. And then it's like 6, 7 hours just on that project. So at least you get that sense of accomplishment. Um, and then next weekend I might take off half of Saturday and Sunday, and then the week after that, let's finish another project. And then everything is always like within touching distance of being finished. And then I can start something new. I always replace a project with something new. So I'll launch a whole division, train someone, let them take it over, run it with them. It's like quality management, all that stuff. And then I'm already planning like what's going to be the next thing we do. So, and when is this podcast going out?
this will be on the 9th. It comes out on December 9th.
So I can actually already drop an announcement. Yeah,
Yes.
because tomorrow, the 3rd of December, we are announcing that Crystal Lake, I don't want to use the word acquired because it's like a mutual agreement. Sinister Smile Press is becoming a division of Crystal Lake. So they're moving in with us. Um, all their books, the current staff, everyone will become. So it's just like another division or imprint of Crystal Lake because we're doing so many non-horror projects next year that I don't want to lose focus on what got us here. So we're going to open another, we'll have another hardcore horror division for novels, novellas, and anthologies, and those guys are going to run that. So, and our Torrid Waters imprint is going to continue with horror novels as well. So they will never stray away from like what we really, really love. But next year, we've got kids stuff coming. We've got a mafia romance trilogy, and a lot of horror readers don't want to admit it, but especially some of the female readers, they love it because there are horror elements to it. I've read some of it, and it's quite amazing if done right. And this series is done right, so can't
Cool.
wait.
Very cool. I'm a sucker for mafia. I can't get enough of The Godfather. I don't know how
Oh,
many times I've seen. I mean, they're great. Anybody who quotes, take a grab. What is it? Leave the gun, grab the cannoli. Like, go to the master. Anytime I hear that, like in a movie or a show that I'm watching, or if somebody references in a book, I just get so excited. I mean, who doesn't love that? And The Sopranos. I mean, I freaking love The Sopranos. Like that's freaking awesome. So thank you for that. Congratulations to them on joining. I was actually going to ask you if you had any Christmas treats for us because this will be the December episode. So thank you. That's awesome. So Christmas treats to everyone, that's so cool. And I love that you also have you have the umbrella of Crystal Lake Publishing and Crystal Lake Entertainment, and you're doing all of these other aspects. It's not just like you have a section for extreme horror. So and because in the book you talk about the different subgenres of horror, and so you also have books that are in that because not everybody wants the super gory stuff. Um, I didn't know what I was getting myself into with the first splatterpunk book I picked up. I just thought it was a cool word. I was like, "Ooh, what's that?" And then I was like, "Oh, good lord!" So
quite hectic. Yeah.
yes, yes.
Yeah, myself, when I was younger, I enjoyed the gory stuff more because it was, I mean, it's fake. So back then, the graphics, sorry, wasn't perfect yet. Um, so it was interesting to see it develop over the years. It was going through a nice growth phase. So every movie you watched, it was a bit better, a bit better. So seeing someone die was like exciting like how did they do it this time? What special effects did they use? Did they, and you still enjoy like the old ways of doing it. So you want to see it that they at least still like honor the traditional ways. And so we were always like, yeah, like cheering and enjoying it, watching it as like a group of friends. But now that I'm older, I'm probably watching this stuff alone. It doesn't grab me as much anymore. I'm looking more for like a psychological, like really makes you think, disturbs you. You think of it like days afterwards. You dream about it. You want to go and reread certain scenes. That's what I enjoy now mostly. So
I can totally relate to that. And I don't know if it's just an age thing because I feel the same way. Like when I was in my 20s, I
mm,
could watch anything. And and laugh. It's like the
yes,
slasher. I'm 10 years older than you, so the 80s were like, when the slasher films came out, like I was all into it. My family was they were they loved slasher stuff too. So as a child, I benefited even though I wasn't supposed to be watching. I was not supposed to see those movies. We would go to the drive-in and they would put the kids, my cousin and I, in the other car, and we were supposed to sit backwards with the big drive-in screen behind us. But come on, we're kids, we're 7 and 5 or 9 and 10, and so we of course would take that big bucket of popcorn and those red vines, and we would turn around and we would just watch what was happening, and we were just you know so I don't know if that's what spawned it. So when in my 20s, now I'm like, yeah, slasher. But now I'm like, yeah, yeah, like the new what is it, Evil Dead, the new Evil Dead that came out. I was just like, that was really gory. Like that was just like, wow. Compared to the first one, I was just like,
yeah.
I
Like you
don't
don't know
know.
what to do next, but I always want to make sure that there's something for everyone. and that everyone also tries a little bit of something else. Because these days, if it's not hurting anyone and you're enjoying it, get more of it. So read more books, discover new genres and authors, escape as much as you can. To
Absolutely. I love that. So I want to tell you about a real quick quote here, and I wanted to talk about this. Hopefully, we've got time for it. On page 109, you say, writing is not always about the light at the end of the tunnel, but finding your way through the dark. And that is brilliant because it's catharsis. And so, people talk about journaling and writing. And so if you spend your time creating these characters and living in these environments. And then, like you said, there's light at the end of the tunnel. Um, so growing up in South Africa, um, you know, is there an environment that just like so I don't know how close you are with wild animals is where I'm going with this. So is that like a fear that's, around or when you were growing up as a child, did you have to worry about, various large animals around you?
Basically, we did go on a towns of were back then quite far apart. So a lot of weekends were spent out in like the desert or camping, stuff like that. And of course, then you have animals, and it's risky. I mean, you do get your desert snakes and jackals and cheetahs and whatever else, leopards, and especially for the farmers, they're quite worried that like the sheep always gets eaten any mountainous area. But it's not like there was a lot of confusion in the old days of lions walking through towns and stuff. That doesn't happen. Although, at least once a year, you hear of a lion escaping a zoo and walking like the streets for like a full day before they track it down. That happened like 2 weeks ago
Oh,
again,
wow.
even here where I live, because they we don't want to lose like the African touch. So there's always a lot of zoos and places to take the kids because it's not as easily accessible anymore now that it's like bigger cities and stuff. So they do have the zoos in town. But yes, the management isn't always that great. Our biggest zoo closed recently for mismanagement, and the animals were starving and they weren't getting clean and everything. It was just like a money making scheme. They were just taking the grant money and everything and stealing it and so on. So it wasn't nice, but at least those animals have now been moved to better places. So,
Good.
unfortunately,
Like,
yeah.
I mean, good that they're,
Yes.
taken care of now, but sad, yes. That's one thing I can't do. I love my horror movies, but there's a number one rule. Do not kill the animals. And so I've learned about did the dog die?
Yes, I know
And
about that.
yeah. And so anytime we're watching a movie and there's an animal, the first thing I do, I try not to get the spoilers. I'm like, I don't want the spoilers. I just need to know, like, when do I need to cover my ears and my eyes? Because I can't. That's the number one rule. Children and animals, no. No, no, no.
I
No.
think we've all lost a, 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 a treasured pet by now. Yes, we've all lost people, but they weren't all murdered or like gruesomely died and stuff like that. But the moment you hear about a dog dying, it immediately connects you to that emotional state where it doesn't matter what age you were, and you're just there again. And it's horribly sad. I don't want to go back there again. So,
No, no, we absolutely not. That's I no. We're gonna wrap it up here with a few more questions regarding the writing workshops. You do writing workshops, and you have your books. You talk about your books, your characters, and things in Shadows and Ink, Volume One. And so I wanted to ask you, when did you start writing? How old were you when you first started writing stories?
let's see. I've always wanted to do it. When I still remember when we used to travel long distance, I would write these stories in my mind. And once I actually tried to write them, but the road was so bumpy and stuff that it just looked absolutely horrible. And I already have a horrible handwriting, so it never went anywhere. And then 2000 and let me think now, 2007 was the first time we got internet at home and Facebook because they were planning my, let's see, 10 or 20-year high school reunion thing, and it was all done via Facebook. It's probably the 10-year one. Yes, 2007. Okay. 2008 would have been the reunion. So now I had the internet and I had Facebook and I could see other authors and author groups. Back then, it wasn't like every author was there yet, but there were groups with similar interests. And I thought, well, now I can actually start writing. And I just Googled a bunch of stuff and I started learning all the basics. And I found a writers forum that I joined and I started writing flash fiction, won some contests, and just went from there. Sold my first story to a Canadian magazine. It was 100-word story, and I sold it for I think 150 like Canadian dollars, and I was like immediately hooked. And I think after I published about 60 stories is when I realized I enjoy the publishing side of it more. So, and it just grew from there. So 2012 is when I started Crystal Lake. 2016, I was able to leave my teaching job. So it was going quite well.
That's awesome. What were you teaching?
Grade five, social sciences, um, Afrikaans, life orientation, which is just like how to be a good person, basically ethics and stuff. So for 11-year-olds,
Oh,
it was
cool.
not. The classes just got bigger and bigger, and when I started teaching, there were 33 kids in a class. When I finished, there were 44, 45. So it was just too much.
That's a lot. That's a lot. So I saw you were drinking from is that a Star Wars Darth Vader mug? Is that what that was?
Yes, this was actually a gift where the cup is completely black, and but when it's hot, you can see Darth Vader and my kid's name on the back as a lightsaber. It's a
Oh,
bit
how
small.
cool is that? That's awesome. That's
People know
awesome.
what to get me for my birthdays and stuff. Anything like from comic books to horror characters to literature, anything, stories, books, movies. Um, I've even got like an LP collection, like the old
Yes. Records.
LP records. I just have to fix my setup. But I still have like a record player from the 80s with the sound system, everything from the 80s. It's still working. I just need to replace a few things and get it up and going again in my new office. So once the carpet's in, I'm just gonna like sit there on the carpet and listen to old records and drink coffee and whiskey and
That's
that's how I'm gonna relax when I'm not working.
that's awesome. So what is your favorite coffee? How much coffee do you drink in a day? And what is your go-to coffee?
Probably 7 or 8 cups. I don't know. Um, no, we don't. I know a lot of people aren't fans of like instant coffee, but that's what we grew up on. We didn't have Starbucks and all that stuff. So, and I mean, even where we live, the nearest like real coffee place is probably like 20 minutes away. It's not like just walking down to the corner or something. So I like to have different brands because I drink so many. I want different tastes. So I just buy a whole bunch of different ones and just jump around all day. Whatever's on sale is normally what I buy.
That makes sense. Hey, there's nothing wrong with instant coffee. I call it apocalypse coffee because that's
Yeah.
the coffee that's going to survive, right? That's the coffee we're going to be drinking when we're fighting off the zombies. So I'm, and overseas, one of my favorite things to do is try the coffee in the hotels, and they have
Mm.
the little sticks of coffee. I call them little sticks of coffee, and they're great. There's nothing wrong with it. I have some
Basically,
Nescafe.
yes, yes, that was quite big here. And when they started seeing the better brands become more expensive, they also upped their cost ridiculously. So a lot of people left them. But it's Douwe Egberts, Nescafe. I can't even think of all the names and brands now. There's so many of them. Uh, but yes, I have a coffee machine as well, cappuccino, stuff like that. I just need to find the box where it's in because we just moved here like last Monday. So it's here somewhere. I'll have a nice coffee station set up. Can't wait.
Awesome.
Maybe a coffee
Awesome.
machine, like a big one, like creamer and all that stuff. We'll see.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, that's like one of the best parts about, setting things up. Like I have my coffee cup and I've got my coffee warmer because I forget I've been doing this for a long time, drinking coffee at my little desk, and you get so consumed with what you're doing and
Oh,
you focus. Yeah, and then by the time you go to, you're like, oh. So now this coffee, I think I've had this coffee warmer for like, I don't know, 10 years. It still works. It literally has one function, on and off.
yes.
My fear is leaving it on and burning down the house. So I like constantly check it when I leave to make sure I've turned it off at the end of the day. I don't want to do that. So let's finish this up, Joe. I wanted to ask you about Afrikaans swear words. If you'd be okay to share a few swear words.
We
Um,
think that's more appropriate. Well, give me like a version of the English one and I'll give you the Afrikaans one. I think
um,
that's, you don't have to like say the whole word, but I'll understand.
all right. So what would be a way that you would say? Oh, I don't want to.
Like if
Um,
you,
yeah, sure.
yeah, it's quite close actually. It's FOK, so fuck yo. Yeah, it's very close actually.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think. What else do we have? A lot of our swear words is very close to like Swedish type. So we actually recognize their swear words quite easily and a few other words here and there. Um, what else?
Is Afrikaans more similar to Swedish than say like Dutch or
Closer to Dutch. Yes, closer to Dutch.
okay.
Um,
Because
almost quite close.
I know some Dutch words. I grew up hearing them play cards at the table, the uncles. And so you would hear various Dutch swear words.
Mm.
Potverdomme. I know I don't
Well,
know if that
that could be quite a few. But I know donder is one of them. So like, ag gaan jou donder. I'm gonna beat you up, but like a crude language. I don't even think there is an English word, swear word for donder. It just sounds like a rough.
it does.
Um,
Do you say this? Is there something like say like wanker? With British, the Brits always have like I really love their words. Like sawed off and bloody hell and it's probably so you might appreciate this story. My first roommate in the Air Force, she was actually born in Rhodesia, when it was Rhodesia.
yes.
Her father was in the British military, so Rhodesia is now Zimbabwe. But she always makes a point to say it was Rhodesia because that's where she, in fact, was born. They had a Rhodesian Ridgeback dog named Rudy, who, and this is why I was asking about animals. Rudy met up with a rhinoceros, and he ended up getting he got a hole in his head, but he was fine. He was fine. When she was telling this story, I'm like, where are we going with this? She was like, no, Rudy was a great guard dog. So,
Right. Well, yeah, I've been to Zimbabwe and Botswana next door. There you still get a lot of wildlife. Like just drive to the next town and there's like a rhinoceros next to the road, elephant crosses the road. Unfortunately, you also see animals getting hit by cars, and then the
right.
local butchery comes up, chops it up, and sells it in store. So you're never sure what you're buying when you buy meat there,
Wow.
unfortunately. But
Wow.
yes, that was quite an experience because Zimbabwe and Botswana is a lot more like African than South Africa. South Africa is quite a lot more advanced lately, uh, a lot more westernized. Yes.
Yeah, you guys are known, you guys have like excellent wines, I understand. That
Mm.
South
Okay.
African wines are like really, really out there.
Award-winning wines and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. So on that note, can you say that again? Is it Donder? Donder?
Donder.
Donder. I don't have the
It's
roll.
it's actually the only English word for it is thunder, because we said that's donderlig, donderweer, is which is like lightning weather, thunder weather. So I'm gonna thunder you is basically what it, but it's very much ruder than that.
Got it. I,
It's like it's like the I'll F you up. That's basically what it says.
okay.
Yeah. You don't.
Okay. So
That's
today's
good.
lesson was, but I do know how to say like lekker. So like lekker's, good, tasty. So I'm assuming that's kind of similar. Lekker,
Yes,
lekker.
I've actually got a shirt that says lekker on it. And I wear it on a lot of my podcasts because people ask me about it. So I want to represent like Afrikaans and like African wildlife and animals and stuff, because that's like the one thing that makes me different from all the other like publishing stuff out there. It's like, well, we're African based, like we're in South Africa, and we've done so much just from down here. And I haven't even been abroad yet. I've gone to Zimbabwe, Botswana, Namibia again, and that stuff. But that's Southern Africa. So next year, end of June is the first time I'm gonna actually travel to America and hopefully meet up with some authors there. And I can't wait.
How cool is that? That is really cool. Well, Joe, I want to say thank you again so much for hanging out. I know it's late over there, and I really appreciate you taking the time to hang out and share Christmas goodies and share the background about Crystal Lake and how you went from your very little humble beginnings to where you are now. So, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
That's a pleasure. Anytime.
And the tagline for the show is Go Forth and Be Magical. I would love if you would send us off for this final episode of 2024.
And then go forth and be magical.